My name is Effie Domar. I'm the Natural Resource Manager uh, with the BIA, Eastern Navajo Agency, Branch of Natural Resources. I'll be doing the presentation on the bonding requirement this evening. And welcome all of you that are here to acquire some information on our bonding requirement. Next. Based on our authorities, the American Indian Agricultural Resource Management Act of 1993 as amended, the 25 Code of Federal Regulations, Parts 162 leasing, and Part 166 grazing permits, and Part 167 Navajo grazing regulations. And then the Navajo Nation Code, Title III. As far as the Navajo Nation Tribal Code, Title III, it does have a language in there in subsection 945, which is within the off-reservation grazing code. It does include bonding and insurance requirements. And basically, this regulation or this code stems off from the old federal grazing regulations, Part 166, 25 CFR. So under there, it does state bonding and insurance requirements. A satisfactory performance bond may be required in an amount that will reasonably assure performance of the contractual obligation. A bond, when required, may be for the purpose of guaranteeing the estimated construction cost of any improvement to be placed on the land which will become the property of the permitter, or to ensure compliance with special or additional contractual obligations. B, the permittee may be required to provide insurance in an amount adequate to protect any improvement on the permitted premises, and may also be required to furnish appropriate liability insurance and such other insurance as may be necessary to protect the permitter's interests. We basically just bring this out because there is language in the tribal code in that citation. Next, most of the presentation is based on the 25 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 166, grazing permits, subsection 166.600 to 166.607, bonding and insurance requirements. Bond means security for performance of certain permit lease obligations as furnished by the permittee, or a guarantee of such performance as furnished by a third-party surety. Surety means one who guarantees the performance of another. A bond is a guarantee of performance that may be furnished by the permittee or third-party surety. The purpose of bonding is to ensure compliance with the terms of the grazing permit. A bond must be secured in all permit situations except when otherwise provided by a tribal resolution or at the request of the majority interest owners, and BIA's determination that waiver is in the best interest of the Indian landowners. It is advisable to require a bond when a permit obligates significant improvements or when there is a risk of damage to the permitted property or risk that the permittee will not perform the obligations of the permit. So in this case, the implementation of the bond would be for the guarantee to make the annual grazing rental payment on January 1st of each year. Next. If a violation results in forfeiture of a performance bond, the funds are applied to remedy damages and the permittee is required to post a replacement bond. If no violation occurs during the permit term, the bond is returned to the permittee. Additionally, when necessary to protect the Indian landowners, the permittee is required to provide insurance. This insurance may include liability or casualty, for example, fire, hazard, flood, etc. If insurance is required, the policy must identify both the Indian landowners and the United States as insured parties and must be provided in an amount adequate to protect all insurable improvements on the leased premises. So these are the under 25 CFR Part 166. I mentioned initially it's in subpart G, bonding and insurance requirements. And these are the subsections that we'll be covering throughout this presentation, 0.600 through 0.608. Next. Okay, under 166.600, must a permittee provide a bond for a permit? And that is yes. A permittee, assignee, or sub-permittee must provide a bond for each permit. Interest acquired. Upon request by an Indian landowner, we may waive the bond requirement. What is the definition of a bond? A bond represents a promise by a borrower permittee to pay a lender, a financial institution, their principal and usually interest on a loan. Bonds are issued by governments, municipalities, and corporations, and ensure coverage in an amount that will reasonably assure performance of the contractual obligation. Under subsection 166.601, how is the amount of the bond determined? The amount of the bond for each permit is based on one, value of 1 year's grazing rental payment. Could be the first and the last year's annual payment. 2, the value of any improvements to be constructed. For example, fences, cattle guard, earth dams, water stock lines, windmills, corrals, buildings. 3, cause of performance of any additional obligations. The definition of a performance bond is a financial guarantee to one party in a contract against the failure of the other party to meet its obligations. It is also referred to as a contract bond. A performance bond is usually provided by a bank or an insurance company to make sure a permittee performs to its obligations to the terms of the conservation plan and terms of the grazing permit. Financial institution will determine the costs, obligation, use of the rangeland or commercial livestock, raising, pasturing, and grazing of livestock solely. Under subpart 166.601, how is the amount of the bond determined? Costs of performance of restoration and reclamation. That's number 4. Definition: reclamation is the restoration of land to its original condition and replanting after the land has been overgrazed. Financial institution will determine the costs. It ensures when rangeland reaches the end of its purposeful term, the land is restored to its former and/or an acceptable condition, and monitoring necessary as the reclamation is completed. And then under B of that subpart, tribal policy made applicable by subsection 166.100 of this part may establish or waive specific bond requirements for permits. The Navajo Nation and/or individual Indian landowner could request to waive the bond requirements for review and approval by the regional director, and if it's in the best interest of the landowner. What form of bonds will the BIA accept? That's under subpart 166.602. We will only accept bonds in the following forms, and this is mostly out of the federal grazing regulations. One is cash. A cash bond is when you post cash through a financial institution to fulfill your obligations. The advantage to the principal of a cash bond is a lower fee. A cash certified check or a bank draft in an amount equal to the required dollar amount of a financial guarantee and to be deposited and maintained in a federal depository account of the United States Treasury by the BIA, payable to the Department of Interior, Bureau of Indian Affairs. Personal and foreign checks are not accepted. The cash bond is listed in the non-trust suspense deposits system and does not earn interest for the term of the deposit. 2, what form of bonds will the BIA accept? 2 is the negotiable treasury securities. And the definition is negotiable instruments refer to securities whose ownership is easily transferable from one party to another. Negotiable securities are considered liquid, meaning they can easily be transferred or sold in the market. Negotiable instruments include certificates of deposit and currency, including bank checks, promissory notes, and bill of exchange. Under that one, a market value equal to the bond amount. And definition is establish a market value at the time of the deposit of no less than the dollar amount for the bond. 2, or accompanied by a statement granting full authority to the BIA to sell such securities in case of a violation of the terms of the permit. The definition is statement within the agreement and/or contract bond. Next, the third type is what form of bond will the BIA accept? Certificates of deposit or CD that indicate on their face that secretarial approval is required prior to redemption or recovery from any party. Definition: a type of savings account offered by a federally insured FDIC bank and credit union. You generally agree to keep your money in the CD without taking a withdrawal for a specified length of time with a fixed interest rate. Withdrawing money early means paying a penalty fee to the bank. The financial institution may require a minimum deposit or proof of business filing. For under the what form of bonds while the BIA accept irrevocable letters of credit or LOC issued by federally insured financial institutions authorized to do business in the United States. And LOCs must contain a clause that grants the BIA authority to demand immediate payment if the permittee defaults or fails to replace the LOC within 30 calendar days prior to its expiration date. 2. Be payable to the Department of Interior, BIA. 3. Be irrevocable during its term and have an initial expiration date of not less than 1 year following the date we receive it. And 4. Be automatically renewable for a period of not less than 1 year unless the issuing financial institution provides the BIA with written notice at least 90 calendar days before the letter of credit expiration date that it will not be renewed. What form of bonds will the BIA accept? 5 is a surety bond. A surety bond is a promise to be liable for the debt, default, or failure of another. It is a three-party contract by which one party, the surety, guarantees the performance or obligation of a second party, the principal, to a third party, the obligee. Principal is the person required to post the bond. Obligee is the government entity or person requiring principal to be bonded. Surety provides financial guarantee to obligee on behalf of principal. What form of bonds will the BIA accept? 6 is any other form of highly liquid, non-volatile security subsequently approved by us that is easily convertible to cash by us and for which our approval is required prior to redemption of any party. B. Indian landowners may negotiate a permit term that specifies the use of any of the bond forms described in paragraph A of this section. And those are the 6 that I've mentioned. Under C, a tribe may accept and hold any form of bond described in paragraph A of this part to secure performance under a permit of tribal land. Under subpart G, bonding and insurance requirement. So under subsection 166.603 is cash. If cash is submitted as a bond, how is it administered? If cash is submitted, we will establish an account in the name of the permittee and retain it. Subsection 166.604 is interest paid on a cash performance bond. No, interest will not be paid on a cash performance bond. Subsection 166.605 or cash performance bonds refunded. If the cash performance bond has not been forfeited for cause, the amount deposited will be refunded to the depositor at the end of the permit period. Subsection 166.606, what happens to a bond if a violation occurs? We may apply the bond to remedy the violation, in which case we will require the permittee to submit a replacement bond of an appropriate amount. Subpart G, bonding and insurance requirement. Subpart 166.607 is insurance required for a permit. When we determine it to be in the best interest of the Indian landowners, we will require a permittee to provide insurance. If insurance is required, it must be in an amount sufficient to: one, protect any improvements on the permit premises; two, cover losses as personal injury or death; and three, protect the interests of the Indian landowner. And under that, B, identify the tribe, individual Indian landowners, and the United States as insured parties. Subpart 166.608, what types of insurance may be required? We may require liability or casualty insurance, such as for fire, hazard, or flood, depending upon the activity conducted under the permit. Under the, so we have the enhanced grazing permit approval process. This particular flow chart was presented in the first webinar that we provided. So bonding on this flow chart is in that green font on the third box, and then it will be after all the requirements are met by the applicant or permittee, and during an invoicing will be done and a payment will be generated. At that time, that's when a bond will be presented by the permittee or applicant, and before a grazing permit would be issued. These are a couple of available bonding companies, insurance companies, and banks that we've come across that where individuals could go to request the type of bond that would cover their annual rental. The other portion is if they want to cover, like if they have the any improvements where they want insurance coverage, then they can also include that coverage. But I think it would be up to these companies to cover whatever would need to be covered. I know that maybe there are a couple that have the different type of bonds that we've discussed. So the permittee needs to visit their banks or their insurance companies to see if they will cover their annual rental for the 10-year. Most of the or some of the permits will be 10 years. We have been meeting with the district land boards, and because of the high percentage of permittees that have compliance issues, some of the term of the permit may be less than 10 years. So maybe a 5-year permit term, or it may be a temporary permit term. We do have temporary grazing permits in the Navajo Indian Irrigation Project, the Navajo agricultural products industry area. Those permits that are in that area, they are temporary. Any questions?
Okay, thank you so much. Any questions from the audience that they would like to unmute themselves?
I have a question. So the people that have grazing permits need to purchase bonds?
Yes. So the I guess the purpose of us, like the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Eastern Navajo Agency, the intent of us implementing the bond is that by the first day of the year, January 1st, we receive all the payments. We sent out a lot of notice of violations after January 1st. So we don't receive all the payments. So what the bonding would do is if at any time the permittee does not make the payment,
Uh-huh.
we call on that bonding company to make that payment to us. And then in return, the permittee needs to post another bond equal to the amount of their annual grazing rental payment.
Mm.
And the other thing is that we need to be implementing that bond requirement. And I know in the past we've never done it.
Uh-huh.
So this is one of the corrective actions that we need to do due to audits that we've had through the years,
Oh, okay.
2018 and I think one in 2015. So the Office of the Special Trustee or the Bureau of Trust Funds Administration,
Uh-huh.
they appraise our program. They conduct appraisals through our program to determine that if we follow the regulations. So they look at 166 and 167. They look at our grazing permit files, and we have to meet each of those regulations to determine that we pass that appraisal. If not, they would point to us that why don't you have a bonding document in here or any other findings that they have, they point those out. And then we provide a corrective action plan to that bureau, stating to them that we're working on it, or this is when we'll close out this corrective action. So that's the other reason. And we're not the only agency where we've gone through that appraisal. It's all the Navajo agencies. They've gone through those type of appraisals and other regions. So that bureau, they're tasked with looking through our program and whether we're doing the job we're supposed to be doing.
So we have to do that immediately?
For the current permittees, we'll be sending out letters sometime within the next probably 2 to 3 months, notifying the permittees of the bonding requirement. And if they do have any questions, we want them to come see us on those different types, or if they're banks, if there's like any type of questions they have, and if we're able to answer them, we can meet with those individuals. But we'll allow some time for them to acquire the bond. We hope to get everything in place, like identifying the permittees, and prior to November, probably towards the end of October 2024, or before that, we'll know who we're going to renew the permit for, and we'll be sending out letters to those individuals.
So after we get bonded, do we submit papers to you or do they do that themselves?
Yeah, the permittee will be providing us the bond document
Okay.
for our line officer, or to sign those documents.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Dustin, I do see you're unmuted. Do you have a question?
Thank you, Mikhail. And yes, I do have several questions in regards to the bonding requirements. And thank you, Effie, for the bonding presentation. It seems like you guys cast a wide loop in regards to the definitions of a surety bond and the bonding requirements, and it just cast more and more questions from me. In regards to your insurance, you said that a performance insurance may be required through the Navajo Nation and also BIA. Is this going to be in regards to previous conservation improvements, such as a fence line, breaking in pastures, or redeveloping wells? Are we going to be charged for the previous ones, or is it just going to be set forth from now until this current renewal, or any kind of projects that are going to happen in this 10-year renewal period? And then I also have you were saying talking about that was the first question. Second question would be the market value information you were asking for. Does BIA have that market information for the insurance? Because you said you gave different types of banks who would do the insurance, or insurance companies that would provide the insurance or the bonds. Does the BIA have that information in regards to that? Because like you said, in the renewal process, I mean, right now, next week is April, and April is the fourth month of the year, and you send out your invoices in October. So we basically have half a year to get all this information. I was wondering if BIA already has that information in regards to the bonding requirements and insurance. It sounds like you guys are going to be trying to push on us. And third question would be the timeline
Can
in
I
regards.
answer the first question first before you go on to the second or third one?
Okay.
Okay, the first question is in relation to whether you're going to be required to do an insurance, right?
Yeah, now that was just the market value, because you were saying the insurance is going to be based on the market value of the grazing lands and projects, construction. The construction projects, if we do plan any kind of conservation improvements. So who's going to value all that?
At this point in time, we're not asking the permittee to provide insurance for their improvements, any type of improvements that they have out there. But that is an option, like if a bonding company, the interest that we have requiring now is to acquire a bond to cover your annual rental amount. That's the bond that we need before we issue you the grazing permit. As far as improvements, we're not requiring that at this time. But if the bonding company says that, okay, I won't be able to cover your rental, but you may include maybe other things that could be bonded or insured, I think that's when you would include those improvements. So the
Okay.
annual bond is only for the term of the permit, which it would be either a 10-year permit or a 5-year permit or the temporary grazing permit.
So just to give you information, I know that you know that I have a temporary permit in regards to the Navajo Indian Irrigation Project. In that temporary permit, am I going to have to submit a bond every year? You guys are going to every time, because I was told that the temporary permits are a year by year case basis. So would I have to submit my grazing fee every year plus issue the bond in regards to that? And then at the end of the term of the 1 year, do I get that bond back? And then does that reinvent the wheel basically and just go back and forth, submit the new one in each year?
The temporary permits are like I think most of them are 2-year permits. Or they even can be 5. I don't recall the length of those permits, but it would cover, the bond would cover the term of the permit, whatever that is, whether it be 2 year or 5 year. So you ensure that that bond covers those years, the term of the permit, which would be January 1st, 2025 to possibly May 30th, 2020, 2010, something like that. So you make sure that that bond covers that period of the permit. So the permit period means when the renewal comes on, like for a 10-year permit, it would be January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2034. That's the period of, or the period of the permit, or the term of the permit.
Okay. And also, another question I had in regards to that is does the BIA have an established process and procedure in regarding the violations timeline? I mean, if you don't submit your payment on December 31st of 2024, but you submit your payment January 1st, the 1st, is that a clear violation of the thing, or is there a grace period? All I'm getting to is there an established BIA federal government policy in regards to the timeline, in regards to when BIA deems it necessary to take the violation or take the bond and say that, and then after they take the bond and place it for the annual grazing fee, how long does the permittee have in regards to that payment being submitted to having to resubmit another bonding requirement? Is there any kind of documentation or policy and procedure established?
Well, if you make the payment every year, you're not going to use your bond. The only time the bond will be used is if you don't make that payment by January 1st of each year.
Okay. And so the bond.
The bill, the invoices go out November 15th. So you have all that time to make that payment. You have like 45 days to make that payment by January 1st.
Okay. And all I'm getting to is just so that we can tell my neighbors who are 80 or 90 years old and explaining them that they have to get it by then. Because majority of them, I know some of them had always made it to Crown Point to make their payments. And then during the pandemic, we all did everything online. So it's just trying to get to them, telling them when they have, a grace period. Do they have like 30 days or 15 days after January 1st before they take that bond, before BIA asks the bond company to pull that payment or the bond from them and to apply it to the grazing fee?
The contract on the grazing permit says to make the payment by January 1st of each year.
Okay.
So does that mean that by January 2nd, BIA is going to be reaching out to the bond company to settle that payment?
Yes.
Okay. Any more questions from you, Dustin?
And in regards to the waiving, what's BIA's stance on that in regards to, I guess, the information that's needed from the BIA to waive the bonding requirements? What do they need in regards to all of that?
As far as the waiver, I know I didn't cover that, but the tribe may request to waive that bond, and that request has to go to the regional director's office. And I know that the Navajo Nation has a process of approval. So whatever process of approval they have on this type of requests, they'll go through that process. I know they have like the 164 process. It goes all the way through the the standing committees, and then it goes to the Navajo Nation Council for review and approval. And then it goes to the president's office for signature and approval. And once the president signs and approves the request to waive the bond, then he will take that, send a letter to the regional director requesting for to waive the bond. And that will be determined. The way the Bureau looks at it is whether that's in the best interests of the Indian landowner. That's how they will look at that request. The other one is the regional director will request what the plan is if the decision is to waive the bond. What will be the plan if a permittee, let's say a permittee does not pay? What would be the alternative to address that non-payment? So that's the plan that needs to be provided also to the BIA.
All
Thank you,
right.
Effie.
Thank you, Destin, for your question. I do have a question in the chat box. I believe it's from Raylita. Question, are the new BIA grazing lease application available for new applicants and where to get them? Our Two Wells District 16 Land Board has announced they were available at our February chapter meeting. I'm not sure if you can answer that, Effie.
There are no new grazing permit applications. What we have going are the current grazing permits. We're reviewing the information for those current grazing permits, and we're working with the board to determine who we will renew their permits. What would be, we're reviewing everything as far as the compliance requirements. Have they met all the compliance requirements to renew those grazing permits? So all we're doing now is reviewing the renewal of the current grazing permits. The individuals that already have a grazing permit, we're looking at those to either renew them or not renew them.
Yes, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Effie, and all those on the webinar. This information is very important. You know, I tried to keep up with you when you were going through your slides, and you kind of went so fast. Somewhere in your slides, I understood that the insurance, those companies will come back, like it's up to them how much the bond will be. Like if we did some infrastructure on the pasture land, of course, let's say the grazing permittee pays $1,000, just for an example, for their grazing fee on an annual basis. And then there's some infrastructure on the pasture land, like they did a water line, they did cross fencing, and you stated that it will be up to the insurance company to appraise or to look at it to see how much it's going to be. And if that's maybe appraised like $1,200. So does that mean, did I get you right? So does that mean they pay $1,000 grazing fee and then $1,200 for the bonding for that whole coverage? It tell you kind of went really fast on your slideshow. I was trying to keep up with you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that I was going that fast, but it's up to the insurance company basically what they will insure and what they will cover and the amount they will ask for. That it's up to the company, the bonding company or the insurance company. It was make sure that the bonding covers the amount of the one annual rental.
Okay, so that's the priority that The
Yeah,
insurance company should concentrate on the annual grazing fee. Okay,
yes.
okay, that kind of answers my question. And then what if a permittee decides to draw out, like maybe if it's a 10-year contract, and then they draw out, or they wish that they just will relieve the grazing permit 7 years, within 7 years, do they get their bond back? And let's say they already paid the 7th year and they're out by the 7th year, do they get their bond insurance payment back reimbursed to them?
Well, basically, the bonding is for the term of the permit. So it would be advised that they keep the permit for the term of the permit, which would be 5 years or 10 years. And most likely the 10 years would be the ones where they're already implementing their conservation plans. And do not have any compliance issues. Those are the ones most likely that would be getting the 10-year permits. They've already invested in it, and they're willing to stay another 10 years, to keep at that permit for another term.
Okay. Another question, let's say there is a
Thinking of
grazing.
pulling out within a set of years, it would be advised that they let us know. So we possibly could give them a shorter grazing permit term, like a 5-year grazing permit.
Okay, it's all up to the insurance company to uh, write out their
Yes.
premium. So let's say the grazing permittee has built a corral and they live right there, and will their house be part of the appraisal?
I think the insurance company would let you know what would be covered. I think what they would probably cover is anything that you will use under that permit.
Mm-hmm.
Any improvements that you do to maintain the permit, like your livestock, um, uh, whatever, to maintain that permit. I believe that's what they would look at.
Okay,
And
thank you.
area, I'm not sure if that would be, but you would have to ask the insurance company or bonding company those questions.
All right. Maybe just to educate everybody, I probably would recommend one of your insurance company to give us a presentation, so that way our elderlies and those individual would understand like what the insurance would want to no, what they would like to include into the insurance. So I don't think it's my house now that's in Jonah. That way, jag think like de dot katot de dot the babagan in lie dot the queen sani all that don't it learn or all that. Of course, area is now that they thought, John, maybe we could probably have another presentation hosted by you guys with your insurance company, so that way we can totally understand and explain it to our grassroots people, because they need to know, they're probably expecting something, but and then it's also written off on your farm form. I think you can write it off under your Schedule F form at the end of the year or something like that. And they might tell us that too, and that would be a good idea as well. That we're not just putting out money. And I know that it's there for a purpose, to pay off if we don't pay our lease, and it'll pick up the payment there. But I think there's more question what the insurance will include in their insurance bond. Thank you, Effie. Siya second na eh.
Okay, thank you for suggestions. We're kind of, we can't advocate for any company. Um, so I'm not sure how we would address that. Um, I would probably just have maybe the district land board or even the chapter invite one of these companies to their meetings. But we as like the bureau, we cannot advocate for, cannot be selective, in selecting a company to come out because if we do that, we're not being neutral. So we have to be neutral with 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 providing information on companies or uh, things like that. So we're kind of just I think reaching out. One of my staff put this information together, and we did discuss that we're not advocating for any one of them. This is just a list that we came up with.
Ma'am, I have a question. I'm looking through these bonding companies. Some of these companies are in California, Pennsylvania, North Carolina. Are these companies that actually work with the BIA? Or is it just a listing that's been put together? Do they know any information regarding how the permittees work and also how it's going to go about it coming from the res?
I think there's companies that are off the reservation. Yeah, like if you're getting even a peddler's permit, you companies are outside of the reservation or they're outside of the state in some cases. And I'm sure they do, inform themselves of the situation out here. They familiarize themselves with that. But this is, I think, this is a list, I believe, we got off the there is a New Mexico state list of bonding and insurance companies. And they do have a site, the state of New Mexico.
Okay, thank you, Kay, for that question. So we'll move on to Dustin, and our question after Dustin will be Ashley.
Thank you, Michaela. Another question, Ms. Delmar, that came to light just a while ago. In regards to, heaven forbid, if I pass away and we're in the new permit period, I know that it's been explained to me that if I pass away and I'm the permittee, my permit is canceled right then and there. And in regards to the bond, does that get paid out to my heirs or my estate? And then does that have to, whoever is going to take over the permit again, do they have to redo everything in regards to the grazing permit, the bond, and to carry out whatever term was left on the permit?
Well, I'm sure the companies, they might have a clause in relation to that. We'll have to, I mean, that's something I think that those companies could be asked about a coverage on the term and when anything happens to the permittee. As far as, yes, under federal regulations, and even when we say cancel upon the death of a permittee, that's based on tribal law, the off-reservation grazing code.
The second part of that question, in regards to that, you in your presentation, you said that one of the options for the bond would be a cash option to pay to the BIA. What would be your standard procedure in that case? Would you guys pay out the bond to my heirs, or would you say that the person passed away mid-year and they already paid the grazing fee? Does that bond carry on to the next year, or does it just get paid out to the estate, and then the new heirs, whoever is going to apply for that permit, and they want to do the same thing and pay through the BIA, would they be required to redo the bond? And would that set negotiated price in regards to the first year of the permit? Would that be carried on, or will the BIA reevaluate the grazing fee and then increase or decrease the bond?
Well, in that situation, the bond is specific to a permittee, right? The permit is in an individual's name, so the bond will cover the payment for that individual. So I would think that if anything happens, that bond portion would be canceled and the funds would be refunded to the family or whoever would have the right to receive that upon a person's death.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I'll probably have some more questions, and hopefully in October when the permit renewal starts. So.
Okay, thank you, Dustin. Ashley, I believe your hands is still raised. Would you mind unmuting yourself?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ashley from Clay Foltz Agency. I had questions on the liability part. Do you all require the permittee to obtain the land, cattle liability as well, or do you just want the fire flood type of liability?
Well, that part, as far as liability, if the individual decides to get liability coverage or casualty, then it would be upon them to get those type of insurance to cover their livestock for any fatalities from these various things like flooding, and
Okay.
we've listed in the presentation. Fire, I believe.
Okay, and then last question. You had indicated that the liability needs to have the Indian landowner, the U.S., and the tribe as named insured. Are you wanting them as additional insured on their policies? If so, I would need that information sent to my email, so that way, for future reference, I can have those entities on file along with their address. That way, when I do add them as additional insured, I'll have that on file, and I don't see that as an issue. But I just want to make sure that they are listed as additional insured or named insured. There is a difference there.
Okay, so the bonding under that one's under 166.607 is insurance required for a permit, and that's insurance to cover any damages, loss, or injury or death. So that, as of now, we're not requiring insurance. And I think that decision is upon the permittee to decide whether they're going to have insurance to cover those type of instances. The amount would be sufficient to cover, to protect improvements on those areas where they're permitted. to cover the losses and then to protect the interests of the Indian landowner, which would be, the land and the resources. So B, it does say to identify the tribe, the individual Indian landowners, and the United States as insured parties. So in this case, it would be it's tribal land, and then it's individual Indian allotment lands.
Okay, thank you, Ashley, for that question. So the next, we'll only have one more question before we close out tonight's presentation. So I do have another person's hand raised in the chat box. Rita, would you mind unmuting yourself?
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Just a question about, since this is insurance, regarding insurance, someone said, for floods and stuff like that. But I was wondering, would it be also for loss of livestock?
Yes.
Okay, I just, the other day I was just reading about an individual up in Mexican Springs area, and the elderly had her sheep attacked and pretty much by wild dogs, stray dogs, and pretty much took all her sheep. They were just laying there in the corral, and I think there were a couple of them that were okay, but would it cover for something like that, a loss of sheep like that? I know it happened here in Crown Point as well to a family over the hill. They've been
styles and prices you love. Ask what makes you you.
The insurance company, it would be advised to ask them if the loss, the insurance would also cover livestock. And under this subsection that I mentioned, that I read, that is under 166.607, that one, it says to protect any improvements on the permit premises, which is that range unit where you have the grazing permit, and then to cover losses such as personal injury or death. So that would be to a person, and then to protect the interests of the Indian landowner, which would be the land and the resources. Because we do have individual Indian allotment lands that are covered by the grazing permits, and then tribal trust lands. So under 0.608, it does say that liability or casualty insurance, which covers like fire, hazard, or flood, depending upon the activity conducted. So you can acquire insurance for liability or casualty. But like I said, as far as livestock, I know that maybe like under when or people that are like in agriculture, raising agricultural products, and when they're doing that Schedule F, in there it says it also indicates losses. So if you've lost a livestock in this case, you determine the value of that livestock at the time you lost it, and I believe you can write it off on that Schedule F when you're doing your tax for the following year.
That will conclude our presentation for this evening. I just want to thank Effie for providing this presentation for us, and for all the participants here for coming on here tonight. And I I hope you guys take back some information. If you guys still need information, I'll go ahead and fast forward on the slides here. Here is their contact information if you need to get a hold of them as far as like the bonding requirements and so forth. As far as presentation slides, please get in contact with BIA to get the presentation slides from them. With that being said, I'll go ahead and conclude our tonight's presentation here. Thank you everyone from the Natural Resource Department for providing all of this series presentation slides. We greatly appreciate it. So let me go ahead and share our information. Let's see. It shares on your end. Okay, great. So just to let you guys know that we do have a rangeland restoration webinar that's taking place on April 17th. So this will be presented by Dr. I am not going to attempt to say her last name because I know I will say it wrong. She is a PhD restoration ecologist from New Mexico State University. So if you are on your laptop and you have your phone right next door to you, please scan that QR code and register on that link that will pop up on your screen, or go ahead and register at our website at nsa.nmsu.edu. It will be under upcoming events. And like all of our webinars, we start at 5:30 and roughly end at 6:30. But a lot of information is welcome, so it can go past 6:30 if they are. And next, what we have as far as in-person workshops, we do have a sheep shearing workshop that will be coming up on April 19th. So if a lot of producers on here, I know most of you, and you guys have sheep, definitely come out to Diné College South Campus. And I should have put this location down. This will be held at Shiprock Diné College campus. There's two campuses, and there's one that's North Campus and South Campus. And this will be from 9 to 4. Definitely, if you want to learn how to shear, how to use your equipment and what kind of clipper blades that you need, how to clip a certain way, and the types of breeds that are more common in our arid climate. And a lot of great information are there. I will have a flyer soon by next week to share with you all, and it will be located on our Facebook page. And we do also have a fruit tree workshop. This one is from the Hujon Center. This will take place on April 20th. It is on a weekend. It's on a Saturday, and it will take place from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Location is going to be at the Hujon Voices of Healing Center. If you guys might be aware, this was the former Borrego Pass trading post, if you know where that is located. It's on 1601 County Road 19. So it was formerly the Borrego Pass trading post, if you guys have remembered that area. But now it's the Hujon Voices of Healing Center. So this will be presented by Josh Toddy. He is the manager of this site, and he will be presenting the fruit tree workshop. So one of the things that he asked that some people should be encouraged to bring is their own shovel if possible. And lunch will be provided at the end of the workshop. And another thing that I did not mention as far as our webinars go, we do have a lambing and kidding. Kidding is the baby goats, if you're not aware about that. We do have a webinar presentation on that. So some topic areas that would preferably be in discussion of this webinar would be what type of colostrum milk replacer that is needed, what type of electrolytes, antibiotics in case the lamb gets sick, or with respiratory, what do you want to do in that scenario? And as far as like banding, How far do you want to band the tail? As far as sickness, what do you want to look out for externally when you're looking at your lambs? Do they have, puffy eyes? Is their nose really clogged up with congestion and so forth? So definitely a lot of you folks that are on here that are sheep producers, you definitely want to take part in this information. So this will be presented on April 25th at 5:30 p.m. It is a webinar, and I will have the flyers up and ready sometimes of next week. But that is our April schedule of workshops and webinars. I hope to see you, all of you actually, there attending on our webinars and our in-person workshops if you can make them. And like I said from before, all of our registrations, you can register if they are webinar based on our NMSU platform. So all you have to do is type in this website, nsa.nmsu.edu, and it will take you directly to our homepage platform. So all of our recorded webinars are then posted and located under webinars and workshops. All of our upcoming April events will be located under upcoming events. And lastly, that I want to touch base on is our conservation planning program. Definitely, if you're a producer and you're a grazing permit holder, we do have a conservation planning program here to assist you guys. We are free of charge. We just ask that you go ahead and discuss your concerns that maybe you didn't fill out your conservation plan and you need help. Definitely let the BIA office know that you are wanting some assistance from us. And if you want to go ahead and host a workshop at your local chapter, I see a lot of some land boards on here. If you are interested in having NSA Project come assist you as far as developing workshops and developing conservation planning workshops, I should say, definitely email us at nsaproject@nmsu.edu and we'll be welcome to help you. Otherwise, we are located on Facebook. We have a YouTube channel where all of our content, webinar content, are then located. And we'll be sending out our bi-monthly newsletters by hopefully end of this month. And if you need to get a hold of me as far as conducting resources and workshops, there's my information to contact our conservation planning technician, specialist, I should say, Miss Shirley Toth is the person that you want to speak to as far as conducting conservation planning workshops, orientation, and so forth. But other than that, thank you all for joining us tonight, and I hope to see you guys at the next webinar and our future in-person workshops. Otherwise, I will be sending you all that are on here a quick poll. You'll be getting an email from me soon, and I hope that you guys fill that out for me. I greatly appreciate it. So thank you, everyone, and you guys have a good rest of your night.
Thank you, Michaela.
So tonight's bonding requirements, this is our last part of our webinar series. If you want to view the first part one, which was the 2025 grazing renewal permit process, view that on our website, along with our part two, which is the environmental assessment. And we are ending our series with part three tonight. So to begin, we're known as the Navajo Sustainable Agriculture Project. In short, we're called the NSA Project. We're funded by the USDA Outreach and Assistance for Native Farmers, Ranchers, and Veteran Farmers and Ranchers Program. You can see there what we are abbreviated as OASDVFR. Don't ask me to repeat that because that's really a mouthful. But this is who we're funded by, the USDA Outreach and Assistance. And you see that we are partnered with several other projects, and one of them is the Ney College Land Grant Office. You see their logos on all of our, our flyers and our webinars that we share. And as well as COPE, which stands for Community Outreach and Patient Empowerment. And we also have New Mexico State University. That is one of our the platforms that we are under, and of course USDA. So moving on to our main goals. So the NSA's main goals are to help producers with resources to help them improve their operations, both profitability and sustainability. We deliver workshops based on the evaluations that we gather from our webinars such as these, and also our workshops that are in person. We definitely want to hear you guys' feedback as producers on what we should be more diving deeper in and what you would like to learn more about. So definitely our last presentation was about the Mexican gray wolves. So thank you for those that, brought that to my attention, our attention, and definitely we're working on that presentation to come about. So look out for that presentation, and I do have several other presentations lined up based on you guys producers' feedback. So I really appreciate it. That really helps though. It gives me, an idea of what resources the producers out here in the Navajo Nation, particularly in the eastern and northern side, what are needed. So definitely, I appreciate your feedback. You can put your feedback in additional comments, but I'll share that later down once we are finished with tonight's presentation. Next, we also help increase our producers' knowledge in the use of USDA programs. All of you are pretty much familiar with the first two, which is NRCS and FSA. So Natural Resource Conservation Services and Farm Service Agency. Rural Development is big one of them, and Risk Management Agency as well. And other service and those of other resource providers. All of you are already known about this program. Is called the Agriculture Infrastructure Fund. That is under the Navajo Nation Department of Agriculture. So if you are in need of assistance in completing an AIF, definitely reach out to us. I believe the deadline was today. I know it was this week, but I'm not quite sure when the deadline is. But we do have Miss Toth on here. She's our NSA specialist, and she would be happy to help you out in completing that application if the deadline has not already passed. As well as USDA programs. The only program that does not require a grazing conservation plan would be a wool deficiency program. That will be under FSA, but other programs that are under NRCS and FSA, besides the wool deficiency program, are needing a conservation plan and approved grazing permit, as well as other documents are required as well under FSA and NRCS programs. So definitely, if you are in need of assistance of wanting us to help you and fill out the wool deficiency, we would greatly help you. And lastly, increase the local production and consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables and healthy foods by Navajo families and individuals. If you've been in our platform for quite some times, for our gardening projects, we always use the expertise from our fellow specialist coming from COPE. Some of you may have known Carol Palmer. She's a food specialist coming from the Community Outreach and Patient Empowerment Program. Sorry, my throat's a little itchy. And also as the LGO office and the NMSU CES specialist. So you guys probably have seen our food preservation that was done by COPE, our garden planning and seed selection that was done by one of the extension agents from land grant, Dinney College land grant office, and soil garden amendments to spring vegetable gardening and more, which, you know, were presented by Dr. Walker from NMSU. So currently we're providing insight on gardening in person, mostly held in Crown Point, as well as establishing some garden projects in schools. So hopefully we hope to aim towards senior centers. And if you are wanting to do a presentation, help you guys get a backyard gardening going, definitely we can help you and assist you.